day to everyone, and today we have our next online discussion, informal discussion with colleague Professor Muammer Çalik from Trabzon University in Turkey. And we expect to have so fruitful and interesting discussion, and I hope that for our channel viewers also it will be something related to their interest and useful information. Based on some open sources, I am going to shortly introduce my colleague Muammer. He is professor of chemistry education at Trabzon University, as I just mentioned before. As far as I know, if I remember well, some times ago it was another university, at least different name, and possible Muammer will explain this situation or this important change in Trabzon at least. And secondly, Muammer is deeply involved in different obviously educational academic activities, and what is very important from my perspective, because both of us somehow are connected with chemistry education, and we know that chemistry education is quite challenging area, I think worldwide, not only in our countries, Lithuania, for example, or Turkey. And at the same time, a colleague is involved in different, in general, research interests are quite wide. Design and implementation of intervention strategies, for example, to challenge students' conceptions, students' use of analogies and models, and many other issues, for example, evaluation of science textbooks, animations, and also so wide research interest, and this is another interesting thing. And next possible interesting thing, that Muammer is quite productive as a scholar, as a scientist. He writing a lot and publishing a lot in different academic journals, and not only locally, internationally, local, etc. And also he is involved in some editorial issues as reviewer, as editor, etc. Generally, colleague has really rich background, rich experience in different areas of education. And today our goal obviously is to discuss shortly about different issues about educational issues in Turkey in general, as a country, and possibly in particular at university, etc. And possibly, Muammer, you want to add something to your background, or to say something additional to our viewers?
Thank you, Vincentas. Also, thank you for your invitation for online discussion. Maybe first of all, I'd like to explain the change of our university name, because you know that a few years ago we had been working at Karadeniz Technical University, but the government decided to divide some big universities into small ones, and then especially for 2018, after the decision, a new university was created by separating some faculties and vocational schools from Karadeniz Technical University, and now Trabzon University was born with 7 faculties and also 6 vocational schools, 1 graduate institute, 2 schools of applied science and foreign language. For the season, we have a new university, but interestingly, my faculty of Education is older than my newly realized university, because Faculty of Education was founded on 1963, but the Trabzon University was founded on 2018. It's a bit strange change for other countries, but you know that some policymakers sometimes decided to divide some big universities into small ones and create new universities. This is like this, I think, for the system. This is really, we sometimes use Trabzon University, but most of our colleagues have still believe that I have been working in the Karadeniz Technical University because my faculty is the same, but the name is changed. The Trabzon University and the new university has been realized. For my background about, thank you for your presentation. Also, Vincentas, and also we have really very good collaboration with Vincentas because we have been working at problems of education in 21st century, and also I am one of the editorial board member and reviewing and producing some other editorial papers together. This is really very fruitful for me. For this reason, I'd like to thank you again, Vincentas, for his invitation to do the editorial board. I held my all positions in Karadeniz Technical University. My master also made my bachelor and doctoral degrees. My all degrees is in was Karadeniz Technical University, and then I was appointed as a professor at my faculty in 2007, and then I'm promoted to full professor's degree in 2014. I have visited several places, especially for postdoc positions. I visited the University of Waikato in New Zealand, and also Western Michigan University in the United States. I had also participated in several Erasmus programs, especially for personal exchange programs. And also we met sometimes with Vincentas in Poland. I think we have discussed about a joint.
Yeah, sure. By the way, last week I returned back from Slovakia because I took part in DY conference in Šturovo, and on the back way home I crossed Krakow, and it was so interesting because it was round way, not via city center. And I reached Nowa Huta. Do you remember Nowa Huta in Krakow? Yeah. It's so interesting part. And I remember it. Yes, we exactly some years ago visited this park together with Muammer.
Yeah. We also tried to, the right time and submit a joint project with Katerzena and UMB, but unfortunately, the European Union Commission did not financially support this project. Maybe we should think this maybe something another.
It's not easy currently. For example, just I remember some evaluation procedures related to Horizon projects are under progress, and personally from 11th of May, I received also 6 projects to be evaluated. I'm working this week, in particular this week, so hard because I need to finalize some individual.
But that it was really very interesting. The project was very interesting, but also had a high point. I think about 9 over 10, as far as I remember. But that the budget was very high, about 3 million euros for the season. Sometimes Commission says that yes, this is really very good project, but I can support 10 projects instead of 1 project because of the budget. For this season, this is really an interesting and maybe sometimes challenging change for us.
Yeah, sure. It's just the situation, and then it not depend on us. Okay, let's continue after this interesting introduction. You just said something about your university. Really, it's at least officially, it's a new university, like a baby, and it's maybe we will return back to this issue a little bit later because it's really interesting in general in Turkey, in your country, that new universities continue to be introduced in real life. System. And what let's say education system in Turkey today? Can you briefly describe it? For example, some
Okay, thank you again. We have, as usual, formal and non-formal education in Turkey. And again, formal education includes preschool, primary school, middle school, or secondary school, and high school and higher education. The compulsory education will last 12 years and it covers primary, middle, and high schools. For the season, we generally call it 4+4+4. For the season, is really very compulsory, but preschool or kindergarten is optional, and higher education is also optional process in Turkey. Also, higher education includes generally universities and the School of Higher Education, vocational schools. We have really very young generation in our educational system. The number of students at two-year vocational schools of higher education is about 3.1 million. And the number of students at undergraduate students is about 5 million. It's really very high. Our non-formal education in Turkey is also includes institution. It's about 18,000 institution covers non-formal education and catering about 9 million persons and about 100,000 teachers. It's really very high and challenging to choose for us because Turkey is a really big country and population, most of the population is very young. For a season, the education system tries to educate them and meet to manpower in our needs and our nations.
And obviously, as you already mentioned, that we understand very well that every system in every country, let's say, has own challenges or faces certain challenges. What are, let's say, the key challenges you see today, for example, if possible?
In challenges, I think we have several challenges in our countries. I know that the first one, I think, the role of policymakers on teacher education system, because you know that the number of the universities has been increasing year by year in our country. But this decision is not especially for research-based or evidence-based decisions. They are really institutional and sometimes, you know, that populist decisions without any inquiry and, you know, that thinking about supply and demand. For the system, there is an imbalance between the supply and demand, especially for our education system. For example, we need for foremen, masters, and some things like that. But graduated from vocational schools, but we have much more engineers. For a season, after graduating the faculties of engineering, generally people do not work masters or foremen. For a season, this is a challenging issue for us because you know that all Turkish peoples would like to work very flexible environment and generally work on PC and table and together. There is no goes to the field trips and something, field experiences, something like that, and try to earn much more money. You know that you are also chemist educator, minimum energy but maximal money. For instance, this is a challenging case in Turkey, and also this is another issue. Also, you know that the parents expectation from their children, because all parents think that their children should be doctor, medical doctor, engineer, and some things like that. Their expectation. If, especially for parents, you know, that did not sit down in faculty of medicine, or faculty of law, or faculty of engineers, they try to direct their students to, especially for these faculties, and say that yes, this is highly prestigious faculties and you can earn much more money, for instance, you should go this way. But they have no idea about their students, their children's capacities, learning capacities, and capable of interest and some things like that. they overmuch over them and then direct them. Then yes, you should do this one, you should do this one. This is another challenging issue, especially for expectation in Turkey. Another one is that Turkish has a centralized education system, and also we follow top-down model. This means that we create all and develop everything in Ankara and say the other cities that yes, you should follow and implement these, for example, science curriculum. But we need much more efforts to give our message to other cities and teachers, especially for teachers, parents, and also students and administrators. This is another challenge issue also in my country. And another one is, unfortunately, Turkish people generally is really very impatient, and whenever the Minister of National Education changed, unfortunately, he or she changed the curriculum. Another challenge issue is frequent change in curriculum. This is really another challenge issue for us. For example, in science education, has changed several times. When I checked this one, 1924, 1926, 1936, 1939, 1948, 1968, 1974, 1977, 1999, 1992, 2000, 2005, 2013, and 2018. This means that also we did not generally try to revise our curriculum. We try to give up all efforts and give up the curriculum and try to design another one. For this reason, sometimes we always criticize it. There is no need to explore or discover the United States. For this reason, we should revise our curriculum. But unfortunately, the policymakers generally say that yes, we should create a new and interesting curriculum.
Yeah, and I'm feeling, let's say, this position because when reviewing papers, for example, from Turkish scholars, approximately in every paper you can find, let's say, in background, it's mentioned at some extent that new curricula or based on curricula changes.
Yes, because this is frequent change in curricula.
But let's say, what are the reasons for that? Why do you need, let's say, to change so frequently this curriculum?
I don't think that this change is research based or evidence based. Only some people, especially for policy thinking, state, yes, we should change the curriculum and then directly carry it out, changing the curriculum without any revisions. This is also only for personal based, not research based or evidence based.
And for example, let's say, generally speaking, what is it you mentioned about centralization? That system in your country is more or less centralized. Is it the same with curricula? I mean, that curriculum also is centralized.
Yes.
For whole country, for all regions, because Turkey
is nationwide and centralized curriculum we have. But that maybe teachers or sometimes or administrators make some flexible and make some change in the curriculum or standards because they should adopt any learning goals into their classes. But sometimes that in Turkey, after any curriculum change, the government has supplied all documentaries to the students, especially for textbooks, workbooks, and anything, whatever you want. For citizen peoples and especially for teachers, generally follow these textbooks to try to understand the curriculum and generally follow this curriculum very carefully, and they are not very flexible to apply, especially for these learning goals. Whenever I go to the teaching practice for my undergraduate students and observe their performances in practicum, I always say that yes, you should be very creative and you can design and implement different activities from the textbooks. But they always complain that their mentor says that you should do any activities in the textbooks. You cannot follow and design anything without these textbooks. They always think that yes, this is really very important textbook. Even though you know that they do not look at the curriculum and try to do only follow the textbook. In fact, we always raise that they should look for any learning goals, and then they say that yes, if they adapt into their students' level. Because you know that infrastructure, students' research interest, and maybe also their learning styles may be different. For this reason, you should adapt and improve any learning goals into your classes and your students' demands. But it's not the case in Turkey, unfortunately, because of, especially for free of charge textbooks.
Okay, and my next, let's say, interesting, I think, question, because I have read on some sources, obviously, that another serious problem is lack of equal opportunities in education. And for example, different reasons or different factors are mentioned, like, for example, some differences between private school and state schools, and differences between schools in rural areas and urban areas, and many other differences. Can you shortly comment on this issue, on this situation and its reasons?
I think this is a problem for all competitive education systems, because in Turkey they are really very high-stake exams, sit down on elite or good schools and universities, which give opportunities for easily finding proper jobs in labor market of private sector or state sector. Given these opportunities, Turkish parents prefer general private schools, because they believe that if they go to these schools, their children are equipped with the different skills and opportunities. In fact, some of our state schools, for example, science high school or social science high schools, are really very good. But you know that the number of these schools are not enough to meet the parents and students' demands. For this reason, there is an imbalance between supply and demand. In fact, middle school students, and they must take another nationwide exam to sit down these highly qualified schools. For this reason, this is really very, challenging case, and parents generally sometimes think that if I have money and I should invest to education all my children. For this reason, they generally send, especially for the private schools. In fact, a few years ago, the governments make a permission and encourage parents to send their children to the private schools and they give some permission or tax to them. The main reason is that the decrease the number of the students in state schools, and also create some job opportunities for teachers and some administrative positions. For students, they generally also suggest that it's on to send the private sector, but the salary is, that the teachers is not good for the season. It's not fair. I don't think that when, for example, my students work in private schools and private sectors, but they generally, their salary is about $300. But if they are nominated and appointed at state school, they can earn about $500. For instance, they generally try to work at state schools. Also, another for the question about urban and rural areas, this is also another challenge issues in my countries. In my opinion, I think the schools in rural areas are very lucky, even though that the schools in urban and downtown have more facilities and experienced teachers. I also generally say my students that in Turkey, the students in rural areas and village are very lucky because novice and beginning teachers who have high teaching, learning motivation, synergy and energy of teaching competencies and fresh pedagogical content knowledge are generally appointed to those schools, and they really try to show their great effort to improve their learning, teaching capacities and skills. However, the collaboration between teachers and parents may appear as a missing issue in state schools and schools in rural areas. I think this undermines the school-based informal improvements. For instance, parents whose children go to the private schools or schools in the rural areas regularly visit these schools and follow their children's growth and academic performance. I think one of the main reasons making private school popular is to find a proper correspondent person, for example, teacher or principal, in 7 days and 24 hours. People generally, especially for parents, would like to access whenever they want. For example, if they would like to ask a question about homework, they make a call to teacher and ask if yes, you haven't sent any, could you give some information about the homework of my students? For this reason, they like to go to the generally goes to the, especially for that private schools. And when our children, for example, are absent from the schools or have a lower score in any exam, and the principal or mentor teachers in private schools generally call you and give much more information about your students' performance. If your children needs any extra private teaching or tutoring, they organize and carry it out. Furthermore, private schools generally start early and late. For example, 8 a.m. To 5 p.m. If both of the parents works, private sector or state sectors, and these schools act as that looking after their children, and they believe that these schools are really very safety. For this reason, there is no need to find another person to look after their children. They generally send, especially for these private sectors. Also, these private schools sometimes have some extra working time and ask students to doing their homework at the school. And parents generally say that if they are work, yes, everything completed when the students comes to home, and they can spend much more fruitful and effective time with their parents. For this reason, generally people send private schools in my country. For example, my son also goes to private school in Turkey because in the first, second level, especially for primary and middle school level, my students seldom attended in state school. But when he comes to the, especially for the high school level, I have decided to send to private school because I believe that the higher education at high school is really very important to explore his capacities, learning interest, and sometimes need some guidance about what the university level. For this reason, I have decided to send private sector and a private school, and they're trying to do their best. Whenever I call them, and sometimes I do not regularly visit the private schools, but they call me that, yes, Mr. Çalık, you haven't visited us. Let's come to the school and talk about your students' performance and see how them make some things or need some extra works and extra tutoring and some things like that, give some guidance to you.
It's interesting, really, and for example, in some countries, obviously, in general, the format that private sector, including different institutions, different schools, not so popular. For example, not so popular, not highly valued, let's say. But as I understood from your position, that in Turkey, private sector is, let's say, much more higher in comparison with state institutions.
Oh, no, the private sector is not, that special for me. About your salary, do you mean this one?
No, not only. It's just, for example, quality of education, quality of service.
Yeah, quality is really high because they try to find qualified teachers. You know that when you jump into the state schools and become a teacher, there is no need to especially to improve your professional performance. And if teachers or parents or administrators say that yes, these teachers are not good and poor teaching performances, unfortunately in Turkey you cannot drop out these teachers. Whatever until they are
from state schools, right?
Yes, state schools, because this is a permanent positions. For a season, they can work until their retirement time. But in private sectors, if you select some teachers and you do not like his performances and see that your some complaints about teachers and the students or parents, and they generally want the teachers that they should improve their teaching performances. If not, they say that yes, they would like to continue with them and drop them out, and then they say that yes, we will find another teachers, especially for qualified teachers, to meet our students' needs. This is, I think, another challenging issue, because that this sometimes encourage teachers to improve their professional development and qualify their levels. This is about really qualification.
Okay, but in addition, I recently have read that schools at some extent not suitable in terms of both infrastructure, for example, and course materials. We shortly discussed already about curricula, about so frequent changes in curricula, but anyway, for example, what is related with infrastructure, we can speak about buildings, electricity, water, the internet, for example, when we're discussing, for example, personally with colleagues from different countries, like in South Africa, for example, they're saying that we have problems with electricity every day because for some period of time we have no electricity, we should, etc., etc. Obviously, different factors, different situations in every country. But for example, in your country, because I found again this in one, I remember one paper recently that it's infrastructure not suitable. That's somehow an interesting issue.
In fact, I haven't read this paper, but I don't think that the schools have problems with electricity, water, and internet, because which are fundamental needs for teachers and students. Also, as mentioned earlier, the government has made a great investment, especially for this since the last 2 decades. The Turkish government has made a great investment to the schools and their infrastructures. For example, it relies the moment of enhancing opportunities and improving technology. We call it the Smart Path project, to furnish each class with smartphones and internet facilities. Also, if students have no personal basic computer, they also distributed hand tablets. For the season, I don't think that this is sometimes that there is a problem with infrastructure. Also, for course materials, As mentioned earlier, the textbooks and course books and workbooks are supplied by the Ministry of National Education. It's free of charge. For a season, maybe we should improve this one, but I don't think that this is really free. Especially for we have some problems if the purpose means that the number of students in schools, especially for urban areas and downtown and metropolitan cities, yes, we have some problems about crowded classes in urban and metropolitan or downtown cities. But this is really very reasonable, especially for rural areas. This is the number of students in each class is about 20, but the number of the students in the downtown is about 40 students. This sometimes, especially for some educators and opposition party members, also criticize that our educational priority should minimize the number of students in each class by building new schools instead of furnishing technologies, smart boards, or internet facilities, something like that. But in my opinion, we should do both together, because one of the reasons about for private schools, popularity of private schools, is the number of the students in each class, because they are maximally is about 25 students in private schools. But I know that some schools in state schools is about 40 or 45 students. And if the parents have enough baggage and they think that yes, I should send the private schools, and you know that the number of students is very reasonable, and teacher can teach very well and interest in my students. But the infrastructure, as far as I mentioned, that we need new schools. If the purpose means that, yes, we need much more schools, because the young population has been increasing day by day, but we have very limited schools. In my places, for example, I would like to give an example. There is two schools, two state schools, and when my son passed the grade 1, the number of the students is about 25. It's really very reasonable, like a private school. But when the new buildings have been built in this area, and the number of the population has been increased, but after the last case, unfortunately, there is no another school. We have city of have two schools, two state schools. For a system, this is not the same, the tendency with the new buildings and new schools. For a system, the infrastructure, especially for about new buildings and new schools, we need this one to reduce the number of the students in each class.
Okay, it's really interesting. But for example, in Lithuania, it's continuous discussion about quality of education, about school quality, etc. And next burning issue is that we continue in Lithuania. We continue to close some schools due to different reasons. For example, no enough students, or small schools, and mainly in rural areas, not in cities. Despite that Lithuania it's not a big country, but anyway, we need to close some schools in different municipalities, and also in cities in order to optimize school network in general. For example, let's say in Šiauliai, end of last century, let's say, after 1990s, it were a lot of, for example, secondary schools, more than 20, maybe 25 secondary schools. Currently, we have only few gymnasiums, that's all. Obviously, a lot of changes during this period of time.
Meanwhile, Vincentas, we have the same problem, especially for in the village, because the number of the population has decreased in the village in Turkey. For this reason, we also closed the schools in the village. But the Ministry of National Education has decided that the minimal number of students, if 4 and above, and these schools will be open again, because the minimal number of students was 10 students. If you don't have 10 students in a village school, and we say that yes, we will transfer to another school, and the government supplies, especially for the transportation fees, and they take these students to another, that big schools, and they go to these schools and attend these courses. But the Minister of National Education has just decided that we should reopen these schools if they have at least 4 students. I'm sure that if we can do this one, but as mentioned earlier, we have no problem in rural areas, because the number of the students is really very, very reasonable. The main problem is especially for industrialization and finding proper jobs in metropolitan cities or downtown. Sometimes that increases the population of the downtown and increases the number of the students in each class.
Yeah, but for example, based on our context, for example, in our country, the main argument is that in small schools it's not possible to guarantee appropriate level of quality in comparison, for example, with bigger schools in cities, which are usually better equipped with different with good, let's say, infrastructure, some resources, etc., etc. At least this is main argument. The same relates to, let's say, competence, general competence of teachers, their professional qualification, etc. And my pre-last question in this part of our discussion, it's really going very well. I like it. We already started, by the way, from this issue. Let's return back to universities, to higher education sector, because anyway it's closer to both of us as people working at universities. It's really continuously increasing the number of universities in Turkey. And in opposite, quality of education and obviously higher education in particular decreases. At least some arguments can be found on different sources, with increasing number of universities. That's it. From one side, number of universities increasing, and from another side, quality decreasing. Can you comment on this issue? By the way, how many universities currently you have in your country?
Over 200.
Oh my!
Over 200, yes. I think the exact number is about 207. But that it has been increasing day by day, especially for founding new universities, especially for private universities. After the private schools, now the private universities are really popular in Turkey. I think this is our main challenge issues and includes political decisions. That policymakers decided to create new universities and open new universities. But we should handle opening new universities very carefully. Unfortunately, the politicians thought that opening new universities in each city might increase economic impulse to these cities. This is always economical issues. And if you open a new university in a city, this means that people find some job opportunities in the universities, and students come to these cities and need some housing places, and some activities and restaurant and some things like that, and maybe create a new opportunities of the peoples in the cities. For season, generally, it's the main reason. It's economic reason. If this city has limited job opportunities and factories and some things like that, the policymakers think that we should create a new university and found a new university, and the number of the students increase day by day, and the economic impulse will be high, and the economic improve these skills. However, this decision unfortunately has resulted in an university inflation and increased the unemployed undergraduate students by establishing new faculties. For example, Faculty of Science and Fine Art, Faculty of Economics and Administration. In fact, most of these newly established faculties in the universities do not have any undergraduate students, but have much more lecturers and officers and administrators. Thus, they seem, we generally call this like a dead faculty without any students, because its function is really very limited. Its function is really very limited. Nowadays, students and parents notice that the quality of the university is more important than its quantity.
Obviously, because I remember when I visited, if I remember well, it was in 2009. I was in Erzurum. I visited Erzurum at Atatürk University, if I remember well, and its faculty, Bayburt,
Yes.
The Bayburt faculty. At that time, it was Faculty of Education in Bayburt, and after some years, a new university in Bayburt was launched. And I remember it was a discussion among colleagues, why do you need in Bayburt a new university? We said yes, but it's good. It's good from economical point of view, from the region development of view, etc., etc. Possible, yes. I am not sure, but let's say the main concern is that for new university, we both understand well that it requires a lot of time, relatively longer time to be recognized, to be powerful enough, or to give, let's say, high quality service, etc. It's not so easy.
Yeah, I know that maybe, especially for I generally encourage to new universities, but these universities must be thematic universities. For example, as mentioned about Bayburt has a Faculty of Education, also popular with livestock farming. For instance, maybe 2 faculties are enough for them, but unfortunately we have not limited to these faculties. We added engineering, Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Administrative and Economics, and the other faculties. And we have created an inflation in all faculties, and fine and art, something like that. And there is no undergraduate students. If we should need to fund any university, we should focus on, especially for thematic universities. For example, for Trabzon University, the Faculty of Education is a leader of education in Turkey. Maybe this university should have been, that pedagogical university. Trabzon Pedagogical University is okay, but we added this one, administrative and economic faculties and other faculties, and now we have been trying to open new faculties. But we also believe that maybe undergraduate students will not come to these faculties, but we have been employed lecturers, research assistants, professors, and administrative positions and something like that. We have been making the same mistakes in our universities also, unfortunately.
because in Lithuania for some years ago, it's also some reforms were started because, for example, in order to optimize the network of universities, and discussion was that it's really difficult to exist for small universities. It's a good example, our previous Šiauliai University, which was launched 1997. Obviously, it was not new university in full, because previously it was Šiauliai Pedagogical Institute and another faculty of Kaunas University of Technology, and two bodies were matched together, and Šiauliai University was launched. But I started my career at that university in 2000, and it were approximately 15,000 students. And after 20 years, it were only around 2,000 students. You see, this is very, very big decrease in students, in the number of students, etc., etc. And finally, Šiauliai University was closed, and currently we have Šiauliai Academy in structure of Vilnius University. And for example, in Vilnius, capital city of Lithuania, Vilnius Pedagogical University also was closed and was joined together with Kaunas Vytautas Magnus University, etc. Some serious changes were happened in Lithuania, and we are not going in the opposite direction, not increasing number of universities, but reducing number of universities. It's interesting experience in Turkey.
This is really very interesting. For example, there is Department of History in Karadeniz Technical University, but now the Trabzon University has decided to open the Department of History. But we know that after graduating these departments, the undergraduate students are generally unemployed, unfortunately. But we have not a real strategic plan and about foreseen about the employment level. Maybe we should do this one, and then we should have not mistake the same things and trying to doing something regularly. This is really important for us.
Okay, Muammer, my let's say more or less provocative question. Let's imagine that you are Minister of Education and Science in your country, in Turkey. What would you change first?
What I would change? That's really very hard question.
Imagination, just theoretical. But nobody knows. It's possible.
Yeah, maybe that's possible. But instead of changing something, maybe I try to increase collaboration between science educators and science teachers. This is really very important because we have been trying to produce some things in universities separately. You know that we don't have not much more information about the science education, especially for science teaching in schools. Whenever I ask science teachers, yes, what's your real problems? They have in the different problems, and if we increase this collaboration and creating some institutions, something like that, I'm sure that we have real problems in science education. Instead of finding our problems in the related literature, and so we can solve their problems and observe and evaluate how our intervention improve and solve their problems. I think Finnish education system do this one. They have created Luma Center or Luma Center, as far as I remember, and they regularly work with teachers and researchers together. And teacher says that yes, we have such a problem. and researchers try to respond and solve their problems and share their experience together, and teachers go to their schools and implement the researchers suggested intervention, and the researchers follow and measure and assess their performance. This interaction is really very important. If I become an authority of science education or science department or education STEM, the first thing I will try to, especially for I will try to do this one, to increase and create some centers, especially for making the teachers and researchers working collaboratively together. This is really important as far as I know.
Yeah, I do agree with this position, obviously, and at some extent we already started our next part of our discussion. It's related with science education, and you already mentioned this area, and for example, based on my experience, and not only on my experience, and for example, as I mentioned before, currently I'm working on some proposals evaluation, and let's say the red line is literacy, scientific literacy, and also, for example, open schooling. Can you shortly describe science literacy issues mainly among young people, among the young population in your country and society in general, possibly?
Even though you know that the main goal of our science curriculum, maybe also each science curriculum in the world, worldwide, is to enhance scientific literacy of young people. In fact, our research sometimes have reported that yes, scientific literacy levels of Turkish students have been improving year by year. But I don't think that it's satisfied, because when I check nationwide exams, it's really very, very, very bad. For example, the mean scores of science-related questions in 2021, the last year high school entrance exam, is about 8 over 10 items. In fact, this means that yes, it's a bit reasonable level. In 2020, this was 10, and 2018, this was 10 items, and 10 items over 20 items. This means that the students tended to, half of them responded to questions very well. But the mean scores of science-related items in 2021 university entrance exam is really worse than the high school entrance. It was about 4 over 20 items and 2 for 40 questions. This means that students comes to the upper secondary school or high schools, they don't like to respond and follow science tracks. It's really very bad for us and achieving scientific literacy level. Maybe this may result from rote learning, especially for high school, which is opposite to targeted goals of science curriculum. But sometimes, as far as my experience with my son, for example, in grades 9 and 10, have them conducted several experimental activities in his school, and go to the physics, chemistry, and biology laboratories, and do some hands-on and math-on activities, and explain very well and conceptually understanding some points. But when he jumped into the grade 11, he changed his position to the university exam, nationwide university exam, and says that yes, I must solve much more multiple questions. If I solve much more questions, I can get a higher scores and maybe go to the highly qualified universities, or maybe prestigious universities or elite universities. This is really a challenging case, especially for grade 11 and grade 12. But the scores of early exams says that our scientific literacy, unfortunately, is not good and is not satisfied, even though the goal of science curriculum says that we should equip and educate our students with scientific literacy. But the main problem maybe comes from, especially our Turkish education system, needs to fill in the gap between the school science and daily life. Even though, for example, our curriculum says that yes, to engage students in active learning or students learning instruction, last year of school, especially for grade 12, mainly focus on solving multiple choice questions and making students familiar with different types of questions to proceed good schools and good universities. For this reason, the discrepancy between measurement styles suggested by science curriculum and the nationwide exams sometimes, that undermines the courses and science education system in Turkey. This is really a challenging issue as far as I know. For example, they generally, that when I ask my students that, yes, let's think about this question, they generally say that, let me, professor, to ask Professor Google. They say that, yes, I'd like to search your question in Google. I said that, yes, you can look for Google, but there are much more misinformation in Google. How can you decide that this is trustable or mistrustable? And when I say that, yes, let me try this one again for the possible, maybe more reliable databases. This is a really challenging issue.
Yeah, Google becomes the best university. Let's say.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, Muammer. Let's focus shortly on some possible trends in science education, because currently it's so to some extent it's popular to speak about. And for example, STEAM movement or STEM movement. Also in Lithuania, it's the main topic, and some years ago, in Lithuania, it was political decision. Also, obviously, we launched 10 regional STEAM centers, and one STEAM center is in structure of our university, our academy in Šiauliai, and it serves for our region, for this part of Lithuania, collaborating with some municipalities, with local schools, teachers, etc. And for example, next idea is open schooling is collaboration, is managed collaboration with different stakeholders, for example, teachers, companies, industry, etc., in order to raise awareness in science education, to raise quality involvement. Finally, moreover, it's related to some gender focus. For example, how to involve more females in science and technology, etc. Can you share your point of view based on your country perspective?
I think, like your country, STEAM education is really very popular in Turkey, and the main trends in Turkish science education, especially integration of technology into science learning or science classes, is really very popular. And as far as I read and follow our research, especially for interdisciplinary research and social scientific issues, improving science learning for students with special needs. For example, visual impairment, mild intellectual students, or students with learning disabilities are really very popular, and science educators intertwine their experience with learning disabled students with learning disabilities or special education. This is really very interdisciplinary research. This seems to be very important because science, especially for special educators, generally do not have much more ideas about science education. In fact, we don't have much more ideas about special education. even though we have some content knowledge of science education, and now interdisciplinary research like intertwining science education with spatial education is really very high popular in Turkey. Also, in-service and pre-service education is always really very popular because we need qualified teachers that enrich their learning environments and stimulate their students' interest in STEM areas, science, technology, engineering, and maths. And this is really very important. For this reason, I think these areas is really very popular in Turkish science education.
Okay. And in addition, because your main area is chemistry education, it's we can discuss a lot about this, but it's obviously an area of your interest. Why is it important from your point of view? At the same time, why are you interested in this field of knowledge?
Yeah. As you know, we have discussed this issue several times with chemistry is really important to make sense of our daily life and make evidence-based decisions. The more we are familiar with chemistry, the more we make rational decisions and refrain from our bias and emotional decisions. For example, if the students comprehend fundamental acid and base concepts, they are able to critically think about a strain and its possible effects on the environment. Thus, chemistry education enables students to perceive the importance of chemistry in our daily life and link their knowledge with other disciplines. Indeed, chemistry education reveals how chemistry is multidisciplinary and underpins other disciplines. For example, physics, biology, and health, and some things like that. If students perceive these interdisciplinary research and features, I'm sure that they should learn chemistry. For example, if they are able to select or inquire any alternative snow removal, for example, we generally use table salt, but nowadays we have been criticizing that table salt environmentally adversely influence the ecology and springs of fresh water. For this reason, we should find different alternatives. Who will find, as always, chemists and chemistry and engineers must find alternative products to lower freezing point. For this reason, we should learn chemistry. Sometimes I say my students that if you like the importance of the chemistry, you should check your body. I generally say this one. For example, I say that yes, think that the calcium, the amount of calcium or the proportion of calcium is really very important to your life in your blood. If the number increases 8, this means that your heart will not work well and you will die. How can you change this one? This means that chemistry is in your body. For this reason, you should check your body firstly if you would like to learn chemistry very well and why chemistry is really important.
Yeah, but it's you know that in many countries, on one hand, and on the other hand, many studies from year to year shows the same, let's say, the same panorama that chemistry is boring, chemistry is difficult to learn, it's too complex area of knowledge, not interesting, and the same question, let's say, remain, like my Italian colleague saying that the song remains the same from year to year, and how to attract young people to learn to study chemistry, not only at secondary school level, but also at university level? How to motivate them?
Yeah, I think the chemistry is only interesting, but our teaching styles are not interesting to students. For this reason, we should maybe use context-based approach, especially for how can they relate chemistry knowledge with their life. If they can do this one, I'm sure that they make our teaching may attract their interest in chemistry. We should do this one first.
Yes, but how to, for example, how to connect so abstract things to daily life problems or issues, for example, atom structure or electronic layers, for example.
Yeah. That's especially the students really very bored with, especially for theoretical knowledge of chemistry. They don't want to learn this one. Whenever I say that, yes, what do you think about atom? They say that yes, it's small. That's enough for my students. But it's really very difficult. Maybe we should make use maybe human models and augmented reality and some opportunities. And whenever they have visualized something in their augmented reality, I'm sure that if they explore the features of atoms and atomic models, I'm sure that their interest will be increased. But it's really difficult because you know that modelizing any issues in chemistry or chemical phenomena is really difficult and needs much more time to improve and design such augmented reality options.
And as mentioned, we had recently discussion with colleague Professor Solangelo Catelli from University of ABC in Brazil. She is also deeply involved in chemistry education and chemistry teaching, etc. And we also discussed about some visualization strategies, about importance of some metacognitive approaches in teaching and learning chemistry, etc., etc. It's really, but anyway, as I said, the song remains the same. And for example, next week I am going to visit Czech Republic, in particular Palacký University in Olomouc. It will be our project meeting, and currently we are working on Erasmus Plus project, so interesting project, Bridge to Teach. It means the main idea is to develop bridging courses, science and mathematics bridging courses for university students, pre-service science and mathematics teachers, and mainly obviously for first-year university students, because it's obvious that there is a big gap between let's say secondary school level and university level, university requirements. When we entering university, generally the first students are with different background, different level of preparation in chemistry, in physics, in biology, and in mathematics, obviously, and they need somehow to fill this big gap. And we're discussing among different countries based on experience, let's say Slovakia, Czech Republic, Austria, University of Vienna, Faculty of Mathematics, our main coordinator project. And it's not easy to find some let's say best solution or ideal solution in this.
Yeah, a few years ago, chemistry curriculum also, especially for grade 9, included the topics of the university level chemistry, and the numbers of the students who wanted to go chemistry related disciplines was very low. But when I consulted with the curriculum developer, they said that yes, when they come to the university level, they have no idea about and they have very limited knowledge about chemistry knowledge and chemistry concepts. And they have decided to move these general chemistry concepts in the first year of the university and adapted all topics into the grade 9. And they think that yes, if they don't like chemistry, and they will not continue the chemistry in this level. But after this level, moving to this one, and then the number of the chemistry students has been decreased day by day because it's really very theoretical framework. For a season, maybe we should, that fill in the gap between the theoretical knowledge and the experimental science and applied science of chemistry. If we can do this one, I'm sure that the students will learn really better, especially for chemistry concept and chemical knowledge also.
But based on our previous some thoughts that it's difficult, it's complex, it's abstract enough and boring at the same time, and low interest. But possible it's connected with, I would say, general focus or general strategy in education nowadays. For example, that learning should be fun, learning should be easy, should be attractive, and this is it's not require some, let's say, efforts or hard work, just more or less entertainment. It should be fun, it should be flexible, it should be easy. We should follow students' needs, interest, despite that we have generally not clear idea about their needs, etc. What do you think?
I think the students do not know the needs of their knowledge. If they explore themselves, I'm sure that maybe their interest will be very high. Otherwise, they think that yes, I can do this one, but a few days later, they give up this decision and goes to another department or another faculty and something like that. In my country, in Turkey, there is a private university, Trabzon University. When you go to this university, the first year you must attend all general courses. For example, you can go to the engineering departments and engineering faculties, but if you explore that, you are really good at philosophy, and then the third year you go to the philosophy department, and they are trying to this one. And whenever they will check this, say that the first year students only explore their capacities, learning capabilities and skills, and the third year they decide that yes, I must do this one. Otherwise, maybe, especially for the high school, do not direct them to explore their capacities or learning skills very well to students.
Okay, but my typical question related to chemistry, because I have also my personal experience, quite large experience, why I decided to study chemistry some years ago. It was also related to my school experience, because it was boring, it was difficult, it was not possible to understand. But somehow I reached this decision, and okay, I am going to study chemistry. Why the young people, younger generation needs to study chemistry? Maybe not needed, and not necessary at all.
Yeah, I think first of all, let me share how I decided to become a chemistry educator.
Okay. Because, personal experience, personal example, it's...
Yeah, because when I was in high school, I liked my chemistry teacher too much. And I said that yes, he explained everything very well and used his chemical knowledge. And then I decided that yes, I can explain and make a link between daily life and chemistry knowledge, and decided to become a chemistry educators and chemistry teachers. For this reason, sometimes you know that in Turkey, if students like his or her teachers, their teachers, they try to go these departments like me. I have decided that yes, I must become a chemistry teacher like my chemistry teacher, because his behavior and attitudes towards the students is really very high. For instance, I have decided to become a chemistry teacher. I think the question is really important, but how can encourage the younger generation to study chemistry is really difficult, because my university do not have any undergraduate chemistry students, because sometimes students tries to go to the, especially for the metropolitan cities. For example, a few faculties of education have undergraduate chemistry students. For example, Ankara, Istanbul, Izmir, they have undergraduate chemistry students, but we don't have, because students do not come to the, especially for the Trabzon. This is the main reason. They would like to have their undergraduate level in a metropolitan cities, because they believe that yes, this is a nice time for them, especially undergraduate level. They have the metropolitan cities may give much more opportunities for them. I have read just paper about how can motivate our students to, especially for study chemistry, recently published by Peter McPherson, as far as I remember, or Ben Johnson in Journal of Chemical Education. It's related about anesthesia, which is necessary for having a surgeon. If students want to conceptualize in daily life phenomena, and I'm sure that they should look for chemistry and studying chemistry. For instance, when we theoretically talk about gas laws, equilibrium, thermodynamics, kinetics, and electrochemistry, they generally theoretically afraid of chemistry and related content knowledge, and also chemistry concepts and topics. But if you can use, as mentioned earlier, context-based learning approach, for example, anesthesia, which includes these dimensions, gas laws, equilibrium, thermodynamics, kinetics, and electrochemistry, I'm sure that students' interest will be stimulated in studying chemistry, because chemistry will be more familiar for them. They can capture easily how chemistry is relevant to their lives, other disciplines, physical chemistry, health science, biochemistry, and the importance of chemistry. Otherwise, if students do not think that it's not necessary, I don't think that they should find it directly another discipline or dimension. Because whenever they explore that, yes, chemistry is boring him, I'm sure that he or she should find another options and goes to their research interest or study interest. That will be better. Otherwise, even if become a chemistry teacher or chemistry educator, he will not enjoy teaching chemistry for a season. This makes also undermines the perceptions of the future generation. For a season, maybe we should direct them. Whenever people would like to go to chemistry, we should encourage them to keep going in this track. And otherwise, if they don't have an idea, then we should say that yes, you do not need to study chemistry. Maybe you should look for another discipline or another profession, something like that.
Yeah, and I think that it's fully understandable that there is no final recipe or common recipe how to attract or to inspire students for chemistry, because we're just speaking in general about chemistry, but we do understand that nowadays, for example, some perspective branches as biochemistry, as life chemistry, and etc. So important from one side, biotechnologies, etc. etc. It's difficult to imagine our lives without latest studies, without latest findings in this area related to medicine, finally, or so. And but obviously that students, young people, need some background in chemistry, and it's possible to obtain in secondary school and possibly later at university level. But this question remains the same: how to inspire students for chemistry, and etc. etc. I think we have no final recipe or common recipe. Okay, and then the time is going quite fast, and we're approaching to our more or less traditional topic for our discussion about teacher education, teacher training. I'm not so happy with this term training. It would be better to use education, teacher education, but never mind. At some extent, I think that both of us are involved in teacher education process, and we are working with students, service teachers, and it's really interesting. Currently, so deep discussion is going in different countries related to teacher education. And for example, the main focus is to prepare a new generation of teachers. And so quite often it's not clear what does it mean. What does this term mean, this concept, new generation of teachers? And different features are mentioned, for example, competencies, because he or she should be highly competent. Multifunctional, it means that he or she should perform very, very large number of tasks. For example, teacher as researcher, teacher as supervisor, teacher as mentor, etc., etc. And he or she needs to organize, conduct applied research, identify learners' barriers, evaluate progress. Not final list of functions. What do you think related to this issue about new generation of teachers? What is the meaning for it?
Yeah, this is another hot question, I think. First of all, I think new generation of teachers means that have digital literacy and the technological, pedagogical content knowledge. Because it's really very important for them. It's really very hard for the teachers, especially who teach, and becoming teachers of new generation is really very hard, since they are immediately bored with regular teaching sessions. For students, the teachers have really digital literacy and need that enrich their learning environment and take their students' attention to those courses. If they can do this one, I'm sure that they have really very capable of doing and implementing their teaching systems very, very well. Also, they need also proper content knowledge and technological, pedagogical content knowledge to become good teaching abilities and competencies. For example, the new generation is really access to content knowledge from other sources. For example, YouTube. And when I ask my students if they have missed some topics or concepts or making wrongs on multiple choice questions, I generally ask that, yes, why don't you ask these questions to your teachers? He says that, yes, I can easily watch and from YouTube and learn these topics very well. If I make mistakes on the multiple choice question, I can read QR code and see how to solve the teachers these problems. This is really very interesting for the system. Our teachers should have really good abilities of digital learning and digital digital literacy. If we prepare regular activities, learning and teaching science activities, I'm sure that students do not pay more attention to these activities because they think that I can easily learn these one from YouTube and QR-coded movies and some things like that. For seasoned teachers should participate in professional development course, especially for new generation teachers, and update their knowledge and competencies and experiences. Otherwise, I don't think that they will not keep up with the demands of new generation and new students because it's really changed. A few days ago, I have participated in a meeting and showed that a few years ago, the attention time is really very high. But now, the attention time of new generation is about 2 seconds. This means that you should attract their attention very carefully if you like to improve and help them learn new things. Otherwise, if they don't have time, this means that yes, they say that yes, I'm bored with listening to this question, and then give up and close their minds to all activities designed by the teachers. Also, the collaboration between Faculty of Education and Director of National Education is really very important for the training of a new generation of teachers, to equip the teachers with contemporary learning methods and plans, and what the students need, how the teachers guide them to engage in activities, learning science, and motivate them to become a scientist or chemist or physics or something like that. This is really very important. Such a process also gives an opportunity for educators to work on, especially for real problems aroused by the teachers. Hence, the teachers can act as a researcher and overcome their encountered problems. This is really very important, the training of a new generation of teachers. But as mentioned earlier, Vincentas, we expect much more things from the teachers. Teachers should improve their professional developments, becoming a researcher, and improve their attitudes towards their professions, and updated their contemporary learning methods and their experiences. And sometimes they like to have, that parents act as parents. For instance, teaching is really very high process and needs much more performance to focus on the learning process.
Yes, and yes, for example, some years ago in Lithuania was a special, not a competition, but was a procedure to decide on some possible so-called national ideas. And one of them was the teacher profession. That teacher profession should be the most prestigious profession. This is like a national idea in Lithuania. And we know that in some countries, for example, we can mention South Korea or in Europe, Finland, etc., and many more countries where teacher profession is highly valued, and it's for example, based on some ranking system, it's more or less on the top. And what about your country? What is, say, in aspect of prestige of teaching profession?
Yeah, the teaching profession, I think, is really dependent on where the teachers work. For example, if the teachers work at the rural areas or villages, it's really very prestigious. But if they work at downtown or metropolitan cities, it's normal, maybe average prestigious, because I think if we only prioritize the teaching roles of the teachers, we may say that teaching provision has no value since students can easily access the knowledge or information via technological tools or search engines like Google. However, if we focus on pivotal roles and role models of teachers, is highly important profession and priceless. Some people always in Turkey criticize that and say that every person can teach something. Sometimes they say that yes, there is no value if people believe that teaching provision is not important for our students. But whenever I observe some things, my close environment, they try to teach something to their children. They say that yes, teaching was very hard provision and they need to have a pedagogical approach to teach something to the children. But I think in my country, especially in Turkey, salary is an important factor for prestigious in any provision, especially for in Turkey. For example, Turkish parents generally direct their children to other professions, and which give them to earn much more money and easily find good positions. For example, medicine. If they go to the school of medicine, they can earn good money and also directly appointed to the hospital. And there is no need a high-stake exam and something like that. For the season, generally go for try to, especially for parents, send their students to other provisions instead of teaching, because the salary is not good in the current positions.
Okay, and returning back to a previous idea, because you mentioned about teachers' qualification, for example, mainly related to content knowledge, not only pedagogical content knowledge, but subject content knowledge, because he or she should be competent enough, in general competent enough, in subject, in particular subjects, chemistry, physics, biology, or so. And quite often we can hear an argument that no, it's not needed, because more important for teachers is to have good background in psychology, for example, or in some social issues, in pedagogy, so-called modern teaching strategies, technologies, etc. But somehow subject content knowledge outside of this discussion. Not only, again, discussion in general, it's we can read in different papers, academic papers, and not only. And my position is a little bit different. Till now, I'm sure that teachers should be good enough in subject knowledge, subject skills, and competent enough. And for example, in Lithuania, because we have different models for teacher education, and for example, how to become a teacher, it's possible to obtain, for example, let's say bachelor degree or master degree in pure sciences, physics, chemistry, or biology, and only after that you can obtain so-called pedagogical qualification. For example, 1 year study, usually 1 year study, it means this module approximately 60 credits. 60 credits, you can obtain professional qualification as a teacher. It means that you have good background in the subject, and plus teacher qualification. It's one model which prevails in our system nowadays. Not only possible in Lithuania. But for example, when I'm discussing with some other colleagues in different countries, they're emphasizing so different aspects, like areas like social studies, like leadership, community service, for example, project activities, etc., etc., and the subject somewhere like a black box. And for example, speaking about pre-service science teachers for primary schools, speaking about study programs, about content of study programs, we can find, for example, modules like project management, educational services, leadership, psychological modules, etc., pedagogical module, didactics, or so. But, for example, approximately no modules in science or related to science. Just speaking about primary school level, because we know that at primary school level we also need to teach science. And quite often students' background after finishing primary school level is not good enough. And this is continue into next level, into lower secondary school level, and later on upper secondary school level. And possible this is one of the reasons that scientific preparation, science education from early beginning is not correct, and this is like a factor influencing situation in higher level. But it's boring, it's not interesting, we are not motivated. What do you think?
Yes, and also this is valid for Turkey, Vincentas. I believe that I absolutely agree with you. The teachers must have a good content knowledge before pedagogical content knowledge and also technological pedagogical content knowledge. If they have limited content knowledge, I'm sure that their knowledge of pedagogy and technological pedagogical content knowledge is not good. This is the main factor, is the content knowledge. The same case for primary school level. As you know, I have been working at the Department of Elementary Teacher Education. I generally ask my students that whenever I ask some fundamental concepts, I don't think that their responses are really good. Then I sometimes say that yes, you are the sources of misconception. For this reason, you should learn science very well, and you should overcome your bias towards science, because they don't like science. And whenever they will try to do something and trying to teach science, the students feel their bias and they give some superficial knowledge, and this means that the next level, especially for middle school, when they go to the middle school, they have includes much more misconception and alternative conceptions. For this reason, the primary school level is really very important, but they should have really very good content knowledge. Unfortunately, we have not achieved this one yet, because primary school level, especially for pre-service level, includes several courses: science, math, language, also social science, and something like the different courses. This means that they have much more courses, but they have not courses to deepen their knowledge. Their knowledge is very limited and very superficial, especially for primary school level. But we should improve this one. Maybe we should also start teaching science in maybe grade 5. The early or middle school may be better for these students in Turkey.
Okay, yeah, it's obviously it's quite interesting and possible that discussion. Okay, possible my last question. How do teachers improve their qualification? For example, in your country, do you have some ranking system or some levels for teachers? It would be interesting to know.
Yeah. The Ministry of National Education has just launched such a professional performance system and to classify the teachers, regular teachers, expertise teachers, and help teachers. If they improve their qualification, this means that they go to the help teachers and maybe have a good salary and good package for them. For instance, the Minister of National Education has just tried to do this one. If I think the teachers can improve their qualification with sharing and discussing their experience with their colleagues, since every school has subject-specific group teachers. This is really important. Further, they can participate in in-service education program organized by the Ministry of National Education. Also, they can take part in teaching programs and projects organized by the Faculty of Education and financially supported by the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey, we call TÜBİTAK. Also, they can apply and follow postgraduate programs to update their knowledge and skills. Nowadays, the Ministry of National Education has offered the teachers to attend master programs without thesis to update their knowledge and skills and what the literature says about the teacher provisions and the meaning of teaching and how to improve their qualification and science learning processes. This is really important and have good opportunities for improving teachers' qualification nowadays.
Okay, it's thanks, Muammer. And as I said, it was as I mentioned, but it's my last question. But no, it's not true. just one additional question came into my mind, and let's say so general on one side, and on another side so specific, summarizing our discussion. Does Turkey has a good education system?
Yes, I think we have a good education system, but we have some problems in that guidance to the students based on their interests and their skills. I think we have some problems about this, especially for guidance and counseling. We have some problems in here. If the other ways, we have a good education system and gives good opportunities and qualified teachers and qualified educators in Turkey. But unfortunately, we need good students, especially to improve their skills and abilities. Otherwise, we have doing the same thing and replicating the same thing and without further steps. But we should especially focus on guidance and counseling. For example, for my son, I haven't directed him to any disciplines. For example, I don't say that yes, you must go to the School of Medicine because you can easily be appointed in the hospital and earn much more money. And whenever I say that yes, what do you interest? And he generally says that yes, I need some engineering departments, but he has not decided to which departments. And I always say that maybe you should talk about the engineers. Maybe you should visit the other departments and say that what's the opportunities of and the research interests and their performances. This is really important. If the guidance and counseling will be good, I'm sure that our education system will go to the very well. The main problems is the difference between general level and the vocational level. In general levels, the numbers of the students is really very high, but we should reverse this one. The parents do not send their students to vocational schools. In fact, they have learned some professions and do their jobs very well, but they think that they should go to the general levels, general schools, and then go to the university. But even if they complete and the undergraduate levels, they are unemployed. They look for any jobs like unqualified persons. For instance, if they go to the vocational schools, I'm sure that they will be very qualified person, maybe sometimes earn much more money. A few years ago, I visited a school, a vocational school. The principal complained that we have difficulty at convincing the parents, because hospitality is really very important in Trabzon and our good money. But whenever the parents comes to here, he said that you should send your students to hospitality department if you would like to do this one. But the parents said, no, my students could not, that assist and service another person. But if they go to these places and vocational schools, I'm sure that they can well qualify men, maybe earn much more money than the other professions. This is really the case in Turkey.
Okay, and as we already discussed, the same question remains: what education for what life? Let's keep this question open, possible for future discussions. And really, it was good. Thank you very much for your shared time in this academic discussion and for your helpful and meaningful insights. One way or another, it makes sense, I think. And I wish the best of luck in your professional life, your professional career, as well as in your personal life. And time is running quite fast, and we're already discussing 2 hours exactly, and we finished on time. Possible you want to add something at the end?
Thank you, Vincentas, for your invitation and interesting and learning to that we are really very curious person and inquiring much more things about Turkish education system, and give a chance me to share our educational system, our challenge and dilemmas and problems with other people. Thanks for your kind help and understanding. I'm sure that we should do the same things several times, maybe regularly do this one, because people would like to learn what education systems of other countries. Maybe I will also use your YouTube channel and YouTube videos with my students, learn much more things about other countries' education system.
Yeah, I think it's at some extent it's good opportunity to introduce some, I would say, exactly smart people, smart scholars from different countries, and on the other hand to share some experiences, some ideas, some insights, and it's really useful, and why not to use this opportunity? Okay, thanks once again, Muammer. Good luck to you, good luck to your family, to your country, and keep well and safe.
Yeah,
until then, possible next